Coming up in our final show for the week, while we test Herman Mostert's deep rugby knowledge as an esteemed writer for the News24 Sport team. Because, folks, 2026 will undoubtedly be one for the books for the Springboks.
There's 4 tests against the All Blacks this year. I mean, those tickets are... the cheapest one there is also 400 Rand. That's even less than the England one. But it goes up to 4,000 Rand for a ticket, which is obviously an awful lot. I mean, if you consider taking 2 or 3 people for that, you know. But at least there is the option now of that you could say it's at least affordable to sit somewhere in the stadium.
Later in our training topic, the ANC's Eastern Cape elective conference is interdicted by the courts. And finally, we recall the early birth of the Kruger National Park with On This Day in South African History.
To know when the next episode drops, hit the like, follow and subscribe buttons on our YouTube, Spotify and Apple Podcast channels.
Today's Roby's Pointless Pride Quiz question is, which of the G7 group of nations has now withdrawn an invitation to South Africa to attend an upcoming summit? I'll give you the answer a little later.
This is The Lead, and this is the South African Story, with your host, Graeme Robenheimer.
Our upcoming international test rugby season doesn't feel all that far away. That's especially when you ask our senior rugby writer, Herman Mostert, who's joining me now in our Foreshore studios right here in the heart of the mother city. Herman, it's been a hot minute. We haven't spoken on The Lead in a long, long time. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, Graeme. Thank you. It's been a while, but a bumper test season ahead for us.
Yeah, you've got much to look forward to, and I'm sure we're going to have many more conversations. I love having you on The Lead. You've pointed out it's 100 days until kickoff in the very first Nations Championship test. Explain this tournament to like the casual, Springbok viewer. It's kind of like a little bit of a mini World Cup of sorts. It's really like the northern versus the southern hemisphere and the best, with maybe Japan and Fiji thrown in for good measure, right?
Yeah, look, I mean, there's always been this talk of like getting the Springboks into the Six Nations, because obviously our franchises now play in the European competitions, the URC and the European Champions Cup. So it's always been a bit of a juggling act, because the Springboks still play in the Rugby Championship alongside Argentina, Australia and New Zealand, obviously. But it's like this is sort of now giving them best of both worlds, bringing the whole of the Southern Hemisphere together in one comp with the top teams from the Northern Hemisphere. So it's essentially, like you said, a mini World Cup, but not an awful lot actually changes from how the season would be normally. So the Springboks will start against England, and then they'll play Scotland and Wales, 3 home tests, and then at the end of the year we'll play 3 away games against France, Ireland, and Italy. And then it's essentially what we would have been doing normally in a normal test season, except this is now in a competition, and it actually counts for something and actually playing towards a trophy, which obviously we all know how much the Springboks like playing for a trophy, obviously.
And we want the first one.
Yeah, definitely. And knowing Rassie Erasmus, he would definitely want to get his hands on that. Although there have been rumours that, what I've heard is that at the year-end one, where we're playing those 3 tests away, there might be some experimental changes made in those games. But then again, the Springboks have shown that their depth is so strong at the moment, they can almost field 2 teams, or they can field 2 teams that are really world class. So I'm sure they'll be right up there when it comes to grabbing this title for sure.
Yeah, price-wise, because as you say, those first 3 tests with the UK sides is going to be held on home soil. Interestingly enough, and this is just me, I'm sad it's not at Cape Town Stadium, but I think it's Durban, Ellis Park. What's the third
Loftus.
one? At Loftus, of course. Price-wise, always a contentious issue. Many of the fans, obviously, for the longest time now, felt like the prices are a little bit too exorbitant for, a lot of South Africans who really cannot afford it. But these seem fairly accessible if you start buying now, right?
Yeah, look, the SA Rugby just today came out with the prices. It seems a bit more reasonable than what it was if you compare to last season, where some tickets went up in excess of 3,000 rand. You're still going to have those tickets, but it seems like the starting point is a little bit cheaper than what we had come accustomed to. They said it's 450 rand, the cheapest for the England test, 375 for the Scotland, and a paltry 250 rand for poor Wales. Poor Wales. Always draws the short end of the stick. They've been having a horrible time of it of late, losing a lot of matches.
Although that last little win in the Six Nations, kudos to them.
They have improved. Keep it to them. They're on the up again, but they could basically only go one way, and that is up from where they were. But look, it's a little bit cheaper. And in the press statement that SA Rugby sent out this morning, Rian Oberholzer, the CEO, said they did take note of the complaints that there were over the last few seasons about the prices being too high. Obviously, there's 4 tests against the All Blacks this year. I mean, those tickets are. The cheapest one there is also 400 rand. That's even less than the England one, but it goes up to 4,000 rand for a ticket, which is obviously an awful lot. I mean, if you consider taking 2 or 3 people for that, But at least there is the option now of that you could say it's at least affordable to sit somewhere in the stadium.
Let's stay on rugby's greatest rivalry. Of course, this is the one to watch later in the year. It's set down for, I think, from August to October.
Through to September.
Through to September, thank you. One of the tests I found very, very interestingly is going to be held in Baltimore in the United States. It just shows you just how much of an appetite. Obviously, one of our upcoming Rugby World Cups will be held in the United States, and of course, the US is coming up the ranks slowly but surely, not only in sevens, but Rugby World Cup standings as well. That there's such an appetite there.
Yeah, look, I mean, that's something that's been coming for a while now. Obviously, it's confirmed that the 2031 World Cup will be hosted in America. That's already confirmed.
Yeah.
And it's not a new thing for Test rugby between 2 non-American teams to take place. The All Blacks at the end of last year played Ireland there, and that was a repeat of
I remember
I think it was 2016 when Ireland and the All Blacks played for the first time in Chicago. When Ireland won, it was the first time actually they ever beat the All Blacks. So they had a repeat of that last year, and now the Springboks will play the All Blacks in Baltimore. It's also not the first time the Boks will be playing there. We played Wales in Washington, D.C. in 2018, which was one of Rassie Erasmus's very first match. It wasn't his very first, but one of his early matches as Springbok coach.
Yes, Herman, that's some deep cut knowledge for you. Well done.
If you go back to that, and you said back then, I mean, that match was very close as well, and you said back then that the Springboks would now be sitting a few years later with 2 World Cups, a Lions series win. It would have been hard to believe, actually.
Yeah. Can we chat very quickly? I only watched most of the highlights very quickly when I have time on YouTube, and I watched the Six Nations highlights. What a gripping tournament. Way more interesting, way more fantastic rugby than the previous iteration from the year before. I mean, the Italy upset, the Springboks are up against a challenge. No longer would we consider most of these sides to just simply be walkovers. That's really not the case.
No, definitely. It's weird. This Six Nations has almost been like a Southern Hemisphere tournament, almost like the old Super 12 or the Super Rugby of old, where you've seen so many tries. I mean, over 100 points scored. When England, France, almost 10 tries in the match. Italy upsetting England.
Love to see it.
Before the tournament, everyone was talking about how England are actually the best team in the world now because they didn't play the Springboks last year. They were on a 12-match winning streak, and it abruptly ended with 3 losses in this Six Nations now. But
some of the English players are so arrogant on the sidelines of the pitch. It's just like, why are you so arrogant? You've got nothing to show for it. Sometimes
does Henry Pollock come to mind or what? Yeah. But I think he's a good player actually. It brings a vibe and a bit of a different energy to the game. And it's something like the Six Nations needed. They needed. It was always a tournament. You would see matches, teams winning 15-12, or hardly any tries
One-sided.
scored, and now all of a sudden that you've had this try avalanche almost this season. I think it's great for the game, and it's especially in the same year that the Nations Championship will now take place. I think it's good for the global image of the game. It's very good.
Back to the Springboks, they've had their very first alignment camp for the year, and then according to your reporting, I think it just indicated from Coach Rassie Erasmus and company that it's been more or less just operationally great to see everybody on the field. Hey, this is how we're going to be tackling things, no pun intended, as the year goes on, right? And then we've got another alignment camp in May. Is that right?
Yes. They had the one in Cape Town now, and they've got one. They've just recently announced a virtual one, which is for all the overseas-based players, like players who play in Europe and players who play in Japan, which they will host as well. And then they'll have another in-person one, like you said. Before they obviously kick off their year on 20 June against the Barbarians at Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium.
In Gqeberha, which the last time we faced the Barbarians, we beat them, didn't we?
Yes, that was last year here in Cape Town. We beat them. We put 50 points past them last year. But this year will be interesting because I think it will be a pretty much more of a bigger challenge, perhaps, because they've got Scott Robertson, who was the recently sacked New Zealand coach, who's going to coach the Barbarians for that game. So it's going to be sort of Rassie versus Razor, which it will be exciting. I think it's again another match that Rassie wouldn't want to lose. So
ticket sales are still open for the Gqeberha test, right?
Yes, it is already open.
Okay.
The ticket sales for the other matches, like the Nations Championship matches, like they announced today, is not yet available. But the Barbarians tickets are already up for grabs. The cheapest ones there are 250 Rand actually.
Are you going?
I'm not sure.
US test going?
Probably the same answer. But we'll definitely be covering it.
Would be lucky to take a quick shot left to Baltimore. Okay, I previously wanted to get you on the lead regarding the future of Rugby World Cup tournaments on South African soil, because it has been something that has been sitting in the back of my mind, and you got this excellent scoop, and you went to this media day with SA Rugby here in Cape Town, and the question was put forward to the CEO regarding, why is it that South Africa's only ever hosted 1995 and we haven't seen something since? And you penned this excellent article, Herman, giving a little bit of history there. Tell us a little bit more about Donnie Craven and why and how pivotal he was in ensuring that we hosted 1995.
Yes, of course. 95 was the first tournament that we ever played in. Obviously, because of apartheid, we missed the first two in 1987 and 1991. But Donnie Craven, who was from the late 1950s up until his death in 1993, he was the president of the then what they call the South African Rugby Board. Of course, the Springboks for a time were excluded from playing tests, or there were a few tests played here and there. But it was a few and far in between, and those only happened actually because of Donnie Craven's good relationship with other world rugby bodies.
I didn't know that.
Yes, he had a very good relationship with all the other, like the home nations in Britain, and especially with New Zealand and Australia as well. We always had a good relationship with Argentina. In the 80s, the South America, a team that they called South America and Spain, but it was essentially an Argentine national team. They came to play tests in South Africa in the 80s. And because of his relationship, of his good standing with World Rugby, they still gave him a vote, even though South Africa was excluded from international events. Donnie Graeme still had a vote. He still had a say in these matters that of world governing matters. And when they decided on the very first Rugby World Cup in 1987, which was hosted by New Zealand, there was still it was still the old amateur days, and there was a few, can say, sort of the old guard still against this competition, that they didn't want it to take part. And Donnie Craven was one of the guys who voted for the World Cup to take place, even though he knew South Africa would not be playing in it. He sort of gave the go ahead, and his vote was actually pivotal in the Rugby World Cup actually starting.
That's fascinating.
Or getting the green light to actually start in 87, and obviously 91 we also didn't play. And then once we were allowed back into
and remind us who won 87 and 91, do you know?
New Zealand won the first one, and they beat France in the final, and
Yes.
Australia won the second one when they beat England in the final at Twickenham. And then obviously at the end of 91, apartheid was taken down, and we were allowed back into the international fray. And because of Donnie Craven's good standing, it was decided that South Africa would host the very next World Cup, which was obviously the 95 one, which we won on home soil. Which we did, but we haven't hosted one since, and there are reasons for that, unfortunately.
Why? And I think money is always a key issue. It's not too far away.
Pretty
right?
much as Rian Wilberholzer explained it, from a monetary perspective, it's at the moment just not viable. It's very expensive to host an event like this. You know, all your stadiums need to be upgraded, and then the Rugby World Cup is very important for World Rugby in making a profit for World Rugby, and those profits are shared amongst all the union members of World Rugby. And it's just a simple thing. If it was to be hosted by South Africa, the tournament itself would not be generating enough money for World Rugby to make enough of a profit to share that profit with the nations. So
Makes sense.
Yeah, and the ironic thing about it is New Zealand, who have also won 3 Rugby World Cups, they've hosted 2 World Cups in 87 and 2011. They hosted the last one.
Yeah.
They're in the same boat as South Africa. Obviously also a small nation, not financially as much of a powerhouse as some of the other countries.
Yeah.
So it looks unlikely, I wouldn't want to say in our lifetime, but probably it could be like that New Zealand and South Africa will not host the Rugby World Cup again.
And that's why the US gets to host another one.
And we might see one in Saudi Arabia in the near future as well. They're probably going to have to put air cons in all the stadiums.
Yes, yeah, imagine. Okay, I wanted to end with this. I mean, you know, this is very important, especially for the casual listeners. Like, who are those uncapped Springboks coming up in the wings that are, in Herman's view, going to blow our socks off when they finally get the chance? You know, the next Sasha Feinberg Mngoma Zulus, for example. Look, it only took us 16 minutes for me to mention his name. But who are those players that we've yet to see really being tested, and the 2026 is their opportunity?
Yeah, look, I mean, at the recent alignment camp, Rassie called up 11 uncapped players for that camp. I think those guys are all guys, very promising players, obviously, but guys who are probably still a bit more on the periphery. So I wouldn't say 2026 is necessarily going to be their year, but because like I said, the depth in the Springbok team is very strong at the moment. A big theme for Rassie last season was that he wanted to have a squad that you could have 3 players in each position. So that's almost like 45 players good enough to play on any given day. So these guys are extras coming in now. If you look at a guy like Riley Norton, the loose forward, who was the junior Springbok captain last year when they won the World Championship, when they beat New Zealand in the final. He's definitely a guy for the future. I think of future captain, but not necessarily over the next couple of years, but definitely 3-4 years out from now. Maybe at the 2031 World Cup, he could be the skipper of the team. Who knows? You know, there's a young guy, Bato Slekani, who plays for the Lions now. He used to be at the Sharks. He's a massive loose forward, incredibly strong. He was also at the Junior World Champs last year. He was also called up to this camp. He's definitely a future Springbok, and I think he's a guy that's going to play a few test matches this year. He's a young guy, but physically so big and imposing that he's almost got, I want to say, the body of a guy that's in his physical prime, in his mid-20s. Sure. So a very strong guy. And then obviously a youngster like Marcus Miller, who was just in school last year, the center from Paul Gym. He's already in the Stormers, training with the Stormers. Not a guy that I think will play Test rugby this year, but definitely a guy for the future.
My rival school, by the way. I was at
like you
Boks.
mentioned.
Yeah. August Interskole. Snowdon.
Paul de Villiers, flanker from the Stormers, he's had a superb URC season. He's going to probably, wouldn't say keep him out, but when Siya Kolisi returns from the Sharks next season for the Stormers, he's going to deal Paul de Villiers for the number 6 jersey there. He's a guy that I expect to play Test rugby this year as well. So there's a number of guys coming through, but I don't think necessarily going to see a Sasha guy coming through, like having this breakthrough season. I think the team, the Boks squad, is pretty settled now heading into the 2027 World Cup.
Yeah. Big year ahead, and I thought we'll just end off here, and I know it wasn't in our talking points, but I mean, we sevens champs as well. It's crazy. Yeah. Like, it's crazy to actually, it's important, rather, let me just say this, to actually, for us as not only fans, but you know, somebody like yourself who's been covering it for such a long time, to just stop and go, yes, like, this has never been as great as it currently is.
Yeah, it's almost like the sevens have, in a way, it feels, I don't think you can probably say that, but it feels like they've almost been neglecting the sevens a bit because the 15s have been so good. But I mean, they've just slowly but surely built up. They've got a new coach in Philip Snyman.
I feel sorry for Fiji. They're always within arm's reach and never really get it.
The thing is, we've won the series now, and we've now actually moved past Fiji for a number of World Series titles since the inception of this World Series in the 1999-2000 season. We're now second with most titles won, one ahead of Fiji. New Zealand have won 13. They're way ahead of everyone. But yeah, like it's crazy to think like a team like Fiji. I mean, sevens is their number one thing, and then we've gone past them now. The season isn't over. There's like 3 championship events that'll take place now over the next few months.
Do you know where they are?
It's in Spain and France and Hong Kong.
The Hong Kong one is like that's packed to the rafters.
That unfortunately is our bogey tournament. We've never ever won a title there, so hopefully we can break our duck there.
I think it's because of that Brighton match. You know, it's just left a curse between the South African and Japanese rugby players.
Could be, but yeah, like so, the 3 championship events, and at the end of those 3 events, another cup is up for grabs. So we've won the World Series now, but there could be a cup that is up for grabs as well. So there's like almost two tournaments in one season that you can win now in the sevens.
We spoiled, eh?
Definitely.
Like, Herman, I really appreciate you coming on the lead today and giving us your rugby knowledge. You know, every time I always try and bring the rugby topic to our News24 Sport editor, Lloyd. He goes, you should be speaking to Herman. He knows all the facts, and you've like demonstrated that. You've got this deep knowledge, and I really appreciate you picking up all the figures for the lead on News24.
Thanks. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Looking for a smarter weekend scroll? The Weekender is your ultimate guide to bold stories, sharp opinion, and a fresh lens on life in Mzansi. From exclusive interviews and powerful essays to wine picks, playlists, and pop culture gems, it's your perfect weekend read all in one place, landing every Saturday on News24. Trending topic.
A quick news flash from the politics desk. While the Eastern Cape High Court in Gqeberha City today granted an urgent interdict to halt the start of the ANC's elective conference in that province. A trio of local ANC members headed to court this week arguing that the planning and processes were flouted or manipulated in the lead up to the gathering set down for this Friday. Lawyers for the ANC, though, as a whole, still had to supply supplementary papers. All this follows a scathing letter penned by Eastern Cape Secretary Lulama Ngqeberha voicing the very same concerns, and that was in his challenge as part of the Tina Bantu campaign to unseat incumbent ANC chairperson there, Premier Oscar Mabuyane. Last year, News24 revealed how the ANC in that province struggled to get hundreds of its political branches in good standing. Endless calls to Ngqeberha by the lead have gone unanswered during the course of today. Keep your eyes peeled for the very latest from the News24 politics team.
And finally,
ending off now with On This Day in South African history, it's back to 1898, and the Boer Zuid-Afrikaanse Republiek, or ZAR as it was known back then, had issued a proclamation at the time banning hunting in a vast stretch of land between the Crocodile and Sabi rivers. And that marked the birth of the very first Sabi Game Reserve, one of Africa's earliest conservation areas. Progress stalled during the course of the Anglo-Boer War, but after the British victory, efforts then resumed, and in 1902, Major James Stevenson Hamilton was appointed to manage and protect the reserve. His work laid the foundation for what would become one of the world's most famous wildlife sanctuaries, and in 1926, the reserve was officially renamed the Kruger National Park. Just 1 year later, it opened to the public, allowing visitors for the very first time to experience South Africa's wildlife and natural beauty within a protected space. In Rugby's Pointless Braai Quiz, which of the G7 group of nations, we asked, has now withdrawn an invitation to South Africa to attend an upcoming summit? The answer, France, which is our exclusive on News24. The US had applied pressure to muscle South Africa out of the G7 equation. French President Emmanuel Macron extended the invite to President Cyril Ramaphosa at the G20 summit in Johannesburg last year, which the US, of course, snubbed that summit, and now the US is also in turn snubbing South Africa from attending both its hosting of the G20 and now from France's hosting of the G7. What a mess. Thanks to our politics editor, MC Ferreira, for that exclusive. All I know after the week that was, it's time to stoke up the coals, light that fire, pour a drink, chill with your friends and family, and look forward to the awesome rugger that we have in store in 2026. My name's Graeme Robenheimer, and so long as there's trust at News First, we'll have the lead.